Well, hello there. It's John back again with the next Lightroom tutorial to do with Lightroom 6 and Lightroom CC. This specifically is to do with the new features that Adobe have put into Lightroom CC, which is what I'm running. Unfortunately, they haven't put them into Lightroom 6.1. Lightroom 6.1 was released at the same time and has some bug fixes and some new camera and lens profiles, but it doesn't have these two new features. One of these new features I think is quite useful. The other one maybe less so, but we'll look at them anyway. So this is the photograph that I put into some of the Camera Club competitions earlier this year. This is Deepdale, and this is my the light in Deepdale, and it's a really nice picture. But this has had a lot of work done on it. As you can see, this is a PSD. Now, it doesn't mean I've used Photoshop on it, but the tools that I've used to do some other work to bring out more detail will save the image as a PSD, which means I can then open it in Photoshop and start manipulating layers, if I knew how, which of course I don't. But so this has had a degree of manipulation, but this is what it started off like. Now this, as you can see, is fairly hazy. It's a DNG. This is the Adobe raw image format. But this is how it worked. Now, to get this back, I would have been playing around with things like clarity to produce that. We probably would have been pulling out more detail in the shadows, dropping down the highlights, setting the white points and the black points, perhaps pushing contrast up, maybe bring some of the exposure out, and I would have been using filters and graduated filters, radial filters, the adjustment brush, doing a fair amount of work to get some detail out of this. But what Adobe have done is, in the effects panel, we've now got this new tool down here called Dehaze. Now if I slide this to the right, watch what happens to the photograph. Now that's automatic. That's clearly taken out a lot of the haze. Now if I go back to the basic panel, we can then push the contrast up a bit to get a bit more light in there. So not the contrast, the exposure. Let's open up the shadows, push that quite a way up I think. Let's pull down the highlights. We'll just set the black point. Going to go, yeah, thank you. And let's do the black point. Black point doesn't want to come, but we'll make it come anyway. Let's push up clarity and vibrance. So you can see straight away it's got rid of a lot of the haze. Now what it appears to be doing is it appears to be boosting the blue channel. So you can see it's gone quite blue up in that in the distance there. So let's just bring down a radial filter on this one, and I'm just going to stretch that out. I'm just going to lift some of that blue haze and put a little bit more yellow into it. Just invert the mask because I'm doing it on the wrong thing, so let's just wind that back a tad, bring a bit more green into it. So I just want to take some of that blue out of it to make it not quite so obtrusive. I'm just going to put a bit of contrast in there, and maybe we'll just lift exposure just a bit and push clarity up, and that straight away is looking a lot better. Now I've had to do an awful lot less work on this to get it to this state. The sky still looks a little bit odd, but I can fix that easily enough with a graduated filter. So again, we'll just take a bit of the blue out. Or just push the exposure just a little bit maybe. yeah, I think that's probably going to be enough for that, and perhaps we'll just crop it. So so there we go. So what I've done here is I've very much been able to create this photograph far quicker by using the dehaze than I did before. When I was doing this before, I had to take it into other tools. I had to just want to pull down the exposure on that because I think I've blown some of the sky out a little bit, but I had to put a lot of work in filters, using the adjustment brush, and do a lot more work to get it to that stage. So that's what the dehaze does on what is essentially a hazy photograph. I think it's quite powerful. But now, I said that this wasn't in Lightroom 6.1, and indeed it's not. But in playing around with it, I've come to the conclusion that what it's basically doing is boosting the blue channel and moving the black and white sliders in, or moving the black and white points to actually get the contrast back in it. So does that mean that I could reproduce this effect just using the basic panel and not using dehaze? Well, the answer is yes. Yes, I absolutely could. So if you haven't got 6.1, or if you haven't got Lightroom CC and you've got 6.1 and you haven't got dehaze, I'm not sure you're missing a huge amount, to be honest, because I think you can achieve the same things just using the tools in the basic panel and the graduated, the radial and the adjustment brush filters. However, there are some things it is quite nice at doing. Let's look at another photograph. Let's look at this one. This is Gruinard Bay up in Scotland. You can see it's a little bit on the hazy side. This I found that on things like this dehaze slider works really well. Let's just push this up a bit. Look at that. Just by moving one slider, I've got a lot more contrast and a lot more detail into the photograph. Could I have done this in the basic panel? Yes, I could. It would have taken me a lot longer though. I do like that feature. So let's have a look at another one of the effects. So this is clearly a foggy day. This is Bamburgh Castle. Quite a foggy day. Again, I've not done any work on this photograph. This is as it's come straight out of the camera, and I'm just going to move the dehaze slider up. Go to the basic panel. Let's just brighten it, and you can see if I look at what it was previously. So that's what it was first. This is what it is now. I mean, just look at what it's done. I think that's done an amazing job to try and cut through some of the fog and the mist in this photograph. I think it's done a really wonderful job on the reflections here. That's what it was before, and that's what it is now. It's got colour back into the sand. The reflections have got much more contrast. So I think it's really quite nice. But there's one other thing that we can do with this, which actually may not be quite what you would have expected. So this is a sunset shot I took of Pitstone Windmill at the tail end of last year. Again, I've done no work on this. If we go to the effects slider and we just push the effects slider up, I mean, look what it's done to that sunset. I just think it wasn't intended to be used for this. We can click on auto tone, which will also help it. I just think that it just wasn't intended for doing things like that. But because it boosts the blue channel and it does the white and black points, I think this is just a really nice way of being able to boost sunsets. Really easy. So that's what dehaze does. Now, one of the other things that Adobe have introduced on here, if we click on the graduated filter, let's just drag this down. We've now got the ability in here to set white and black points inside the filter, and it's just going to touch the filter. So as you can see, as I slide the white pointer around, it's just affecting the filter. It's not affecting anything down at the bottom. We can do the blacks. So it's given us the ability now to affect the white and black point in a local area. Now the white and black points on the photograph are the parts of the photograph that would be either paper white or completely black if you printed it. Before you could only do it globally. Well, now if you get something like this, you might set the black point, and the black point might well be set on what is down here in the foreground, but it wouldn't necessarily be right for what's in the sky. And similarly, the white point might be set on something in the sky and isn't right for something in the foreground. Well, now we've got the ability to change it locally. So this is in the graduated filter. We have the same things in the radial filter. So we could draw a little radial filter in here. I don't know, maybe somewhere around there. Not suggesting that this is a good idea for doing this, but it'll give you the idea. Actually, maybe I want to put a spotlight on the door. Yeah, let's do that. Let's put a searchlight on the door. So we can then do the white point just inside here, and a black point just inside the filter area. And we've got the same functionality on the adjustment brush, where we can set the white point and the black point on the adjustment brush, so we can now paint that into a particular area. So that's actually quite an interesting feature that they've added to Lightroom. I'm not altogether convinced of the real benefit of having it on the adjustment brush, but I guess it's a nice thing to have on the few times where you might want to use it. But anyway, that's what's new in Lightroom CC, released earlier this week in June, and also the new features. Well, actually, yes, and what's not in there. The other thing that's been put into the latest version of Lightroom CC is they've made some Lightroom Mobile enhancements, currently only in the iPhone and the iPad, where they've introduced things like the tone curve, and a couple of the other enhancements have gone into Lightroom Mobile. I don't use Lightroom Mobile myself because to make it work, you need to synchronize with your catalog, which means you have to have your photos into the catalog first before you can use them in Lightroom Mobile, and I'm just not convinced of the benefit of having them on a mobile. But that's just my personal rant. Anyway, that's it really. That's what I wanted to show you. The dehaze and the setting the white and black points on the local adjustment tools. So thank you for watching, and we'll do another Lightroom video, hopefully this time a little bit quicker than or a shorter gap at least than this last one. Thank you for watching.